What's up, everyone? Today, we're going to talk about how to edit using Adobe Premiere. There are literally thousands of videos about Premiere covering the thousands of features the software has. I'm not going to come anywhere close to covering all of that. Instead, I'm going to teach you the first 11 things you need to know about Premiere. This video basically assumes this is the first time you're opening Premiere and will take you from creating your first project to exporting a finished video. Let's jump into it. The first thing you need to know about Premiere doesn't actually have anything to do with Premiere. Let's start by talking about getting organized. For starters, you'll need to get your footage onto your computer. This is an SD card, which is the thing your camera is actually writing to. You're gonna wanna take it out of your camera and plug it into the computer. It's important to note that when you're editing in Premiere, all of your clips are just references to these files. If you fire up Premiere and import your footage directly from your SD card, it'll work, but only as long as you have that SD card plugged into the computer. If you close your project, eject the card to go shoot something else, and then reopen your project later, you get this scary screen. To avoid that, you'll want to first import your footage into a folder on your computer. To do that, you'll want to open Finder, the little happy face icon down at the bottom of your screen. I usually like to go ahead and open a second window by holding Command and then pressing in. That way you have one window for where your footage is and one window for where you want your footage to be. We'll use this first window for where we want our footage to be. You can make a folder on the desktop or documents. It's typically best to use documents and first make a master folder for this and all your future projects. Hold Shift, Command, and N at the same time to create a new folder. Just call it something like Video Projects. Then within that folder, create a subfolder for your project. I'm going to call this one Welcome to Premiere. Now that right there is the bare minimum. If you want to just throw all your assets in this one folder, technically you'll be fine. However, it's best to have even more subfolders. Most projects will have three basic things: your video footage, audio, and graphics. Some people break this down further and might have dozens of folders in their project to keep everything organized. I'm going to stop here though. From here, we'll want to import our footage. In your second Finder window under Devices, you should see your SD card. It might be named after the brand of card, but if you use your camera to format the card, it'll be named by the camera manufacturer. Once you click on the SD card, you can also see the folders that have been generated. What they're called and what's in them will change based on the model of camera you filmed on. Our most basic camera is the Canon T6, which is also a camera a lot of students get for their first DSLR. That camera will store footage in DCIM, then 100 Canon. Depending on what you've used, you might just need to click around until you find your footage. From there, drag those files into the footage folder you created in your project folder. All the work we just did is an essential part of creating videos. Now that we've done that prep work, we can finally fire up Premiere. The icon for Premiere is this magenta PR down here. Click on that and it'll start loading up a bunch of features and plugins. Once that's finished, you'll get this screen. If you have any previous projects, they'll show up here, but we're gonna go over to this area here and select New Project. That'll bring up this dialog box. This can already look a little bit intimidating, but the only thing you need to be concerned about are these first two lines. Name is pretty self-explanatory. Just name your project whatever you want. It's usually best to use the same name as the project folder you created and for it to be pretty descriptive of what you're working on. Below name is location, which is where you tell Premiere to save the file. If you click this drop-down menu, it'll show you the last few places you've saved stuff. But if this is your first project, or if you're gonna navigate to a new folder, you'll wanna click this Browse button and then navigate to the project folder you created earlier, then select OK. Okay, so this is Premiere and it looks super intimidating. Like I said, it has literally thousands of features, but as you get started, you'll barely need any of them. The screen you're seeing now is made up of a bunch of different panels that have various tools and functions. At the top of the window, you can see and select different workspaces. These workspaces are just different arrangements of panels. If you become used to seeing a feature in a certain place and then one day the button just isn't there, it's probably because you've accidentally changed workspaces. The first workspace you should learn is Effects. This workspace will have most of the features you need to get started. At the bottom left is the Project panel. This is where all your assets you use in your project will be stored. To the right of that is your timeline. That's where assembly and editing of your project will take place. Above your timeline is the Program panel, which is where you can see the outcome of what you're doing in your timeline. To the right is the Effects panel, and as its name suggests, this is where you can find effects to apply to your video and audio files. Last but not least, in the top left corner is the Effects Control panel. This will contain features to manipulate the default and any additional effects you add. That's a lot. I get it. Take a deep breath, everything will be okay. You'll learn a lot more about all of this as you use the software, but that's a brief tour. Now let's take a look at doing some actual editing. Okay, I promise these tips are going to start speeding up now. I gave you the tour and I'm sure you were like, yeah, just show me how to start editing. We can finally get into that now. So you created a folder and imported footage from your SD card. How do you get that into Premiere? You have to import it again. You can go to File and then Import, or you can just hit Command I. It's I for import, making that a pretty easy shortcut to remember. You're gonna do that a bunch, so you may as well learn the shortcut now. From this dialog box, you'll navigate to the folder you created for your project. If you were smart and created a footage subfolder, you can just import the whole folder, and then boom, all your clips will show up in the Premiere project panel. Cool, your clips are now in your project. So now what? Most of the time, I use the icon view so I can see a preview of all the clips in my bins. This button here switches you to list view, where you can see more metadata about your clips. This button gets you back to icon view. From here, you'll drag clips into the timeline to start doing some editing. But there's a few things to talk about first. For starters, let's talk about the order of those clips. The default is that your clips will be sorted by user order. Now, I know that when you're in user order, you can drag clips around to store them wherever you want, but I don't know how the initial order is actually set. What I do know is that the default won't be the order you filmed everything in. If you want the clips in your project panel to be sequential, you'll need to hit this Sort Icons button and then select List View Sort. Now comes the big decision in your editing style. You can take either an additive or subtractive approach. I actually have another tutorial exclusively about that choice, so if you're interested in that, pause here or go watch that video next. I'll take a neutral approach right now, though, and just add one clip. Once you drag a clip over to the timeline, this panel changes a bit. Each of these horizontal lines forms a track. By default, you'll have 3 video tracks and 3 audio tracks, but you can add more. And as your edits get more complex, the way you use tracks will get more complex as well. If you want to see some gnarly stuff, go check out #TimelineTuesday on Instagram. The most basic thing you need to know though is that video layers stack on top of each other. So if I move a second clip to video track 2, when I play this sequence, you can see how we see that new clip, but we can still hear the audio from the original clip. What's up, everybody? Today we are talking about Adobe Premiere, and in order to show you how to use it, I needed some footage. So this is that footage. You are now seeing a video within a video, so it's a little bit meta, but hopefully it turns out all right. So let's assume that you didn't set your in and out points using the source panel. You probably won't need the entirety of all the clips you filmed. There's almost always a little shake or a little extra stuff you don't need at the beginning and end of each clip. Therefore, you'll want to trim them. You can see as I move my cursor to the edge of the clip here in the timeline, it'll change to this red bracket with an arrow. Once you see that, you can drag right or left to change the start or stop of your clip. So what if you want to get rid of the middle of a clip? For that, you'll need the razor tool. You can change tools by clicking them over here, but they also have a keyboard shortcut. You'll use the razor tool a lot, so just memorize the shortcut now. It's C for cut. Now you can see that my cursor has changed from the standard arrow to a razor blade icon. When you're hovering over a spot with nothing to cut, it has a red slash through it. But when you move your cursor over a clip, it's just a razor blade with a line. Wherever you put that line will determine where the tool cuts. Just click to cut. If your playhead is set where you want to make your cut, the tool will lock onto that spot, so you don't accidentally cut a frame or two away from where you were trying to make your cut. To get rid of something in the middle of a clip, cut at the start and stop of the part you don't want, and then it acts like its own clip. Switch back to the selection tool you originally had by pressing V on the keyboard, or clicking the tool itself. Now you can select the part you don't want and just hit delete on the keyboard. Finally, move the second part of your clip forward in the timeline to close that gap. You won't necessarily want to add music to every video you make, but this is probably something you'll do for a lot of videos. I won't be taking time to talk about where to find copyright-free music or how to license music for your videos or why that matters in the first place. I'll cover those topics separately someday, and hopefully I'll think to come back and maybe link one of them here. Let's assume though that you've found the perfect song and it's in your downloads folder. Just like at the beginning, when we put all our video clips in a project folder, let's move the song to the music subfolder like you hopefully made at the beginning. Again, bring up two Finder windows, navigate to your project folder in one, and then in the other, find your song file and drag it into the folder. Now we'll go back to Premiere and hit Command-I to launch the import dialog box. Navigate to the folder you just moved the file to and then select Import. If you imported the whole folder, you now have a bin in Premiere for music, and you can select your song and drag it into your timeline. Be careful to drag the song onto an audio track without any other audio, or you'll delete all that audio from your timeline. Now that you've got two things in your timeline making noise, you'll probably want to mix that audio so everything sounds good together. Even though I'm showing you how to do this with interview audio from a video and a song, these principles apply to any audio editing. The first thing I'll do is tag my audio. I'll select the interview first, and then over in the effects panel, there's a section called Essential Sound. It'll prompt you to first tag the audio using one of 4 categories. Each of these categories will have its own set of features relevant to that type of audio. I'll tag my interview as dialogue and make my song as music. Eventually, I'll have a tutorial introducing you to more elements of the Essential Sound panel, but for now, we're just concerned about volume. If you want your dialogue to be audible, you'll almost certainly need to turn down the volume of your music track. You do that here by moving the slider or typing in a value. Someday, you might start to be concerned with your levels being at a certain industry standard, but for now, just mix based on what you think sounds good. Play part of your clip, make adjustments, repeat till you're happy. Transitions. This is a tricky one for me. Technically, between each clip, there's just a standard cut transition, but beyond that, I don't use many transition effects. The most basic transition is a crossfade, and I definitely do use these from time to time. If nothing else, it's good to fade in your first clip and fade out your last clip. You can use this wherever you want though. Crossfades can look good as you're transitioning from one location to another or trying to show some passage of time. The default is that transitions take half a second, but you can also adjust that just like trimming clips. A lot of times, to get your cursor to change to the right tool though, you'll need to be zoomed in on your timeline for more precise editing. Obviously, there are a ton of different styles of videos, and some styles lend themselves more to using transitions. Travel videos are pretty notorious for having a lot of transitions in them. Mess around with all of the transitions to see what they do and see if you might like using any of them for your videos. Just be careful not to go overboard with crazy transitions between each clip, or it might be distracting and pull your viewer out of your video. Trends change and your style will change with time too. What's right for me won't necessarily be right for you, and vice versa. Are you ready? Have you finished your edit and you're finally ready to export something you can share with the world? The time has come. You're ready to learn how to export. By default, your video will last until the end of the last clip in your timeline. That means if you did your edit over here, but have some scraps at the end of your timeline, your project will export the part you want, then a silent black screen, then the scrap parts at the end. You can either delete everything you didn't use, or you can mark the in and out point for your video. To do that, just put your playhead at the end of your video and then either go to markers, mark out, or you can just hit O on your keyboard. The endpoint will be at the very beginning by default, but if you want to export just a portion of your timeline, you can also set the endpoint wherever you want. Once you've got your in and out set, you can go to File, Export, Media, or just hit Command M. That'll launch the last intimidating dialog box you have to deal with. Most of this stuff you don't need to care about until you grow enough to find a reason for messing with it. Here's what you do need to know though. Up here, there are a bunch of presets and they vary by the format. The best format to use as you're getting started is H.264, and then under presets, there's a nifty little preset for YouTube 1080p, which almost all the videos that my students and I make are for YouTube, so this is a great preset to use. From here, you'll also want to change the output name. Go ahead and name that the same thing as your project. And then also select where you want that to be saved. So thankfully mine's already come up, but you might need to navigate to documents or to see everything, hit this little button. And then now you can go to documents, video projects, welcome to Premiere. Say save, and then down at the bottom is an export button. These settings we just used will result in a .mp4 file, which is the most standardized file type for video and can be played from almost any program that is capable of playing video. That was a lot. We did it though. You went from possibly never even seeing Premiere in action to creating your first video. Although this video covered a lot, there is a ton more to learn about Premiere, and the best way for you to learn it is to use it. So go make some videos. When you run into something you can imagine but you don't know how to do, just type a little query into YouTube. Somebody has probably already made a video about it. You can also leave me a question in the comments and I'll try to type you an answer or maybe even make a tutorial about it. I really appreciate you taking the time to learn with me. If you enjoyed this, drop a like, and if you're new here, maybe even hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a thing, but it'll make me smile. As always, it doesn't matter if it's perfect, it only matters that you start.